Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin and we're going to discuss the likelihood of capitulation. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Let's go ahead and jump in. Now, we spoke about the possible capitulation a few months ago, and it was a video back in January, and we called it, will a capitulation fuel the next rally? And one of the issues that we have right now is that we haven't seen a capitulation yet. Now, the obvious retort to the idea that we haven't seen a capitulation yet is for someone to say, well, look what happened in January. Is that not a capitulation? Well, listen, anything's possible. You could be right. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and be overly deterministic about anything because I know that there's no way to know exactly what will happen. But the main problem that I have with calling January the capitulation event is that it was not accompanied by a lot of volume. Okay, now let me walk you through this story here. Usually, it takes a long time of decreasing volume followed by hitting a wall. And that wall is a capitulation that has a lot of volume that is significantly more than the volume that preceded it. Okay, so you have exhibit A. And then normally, remember, during a blow off top, you have a lot of volume. So you have a lot of volume at a blow off top, and then you have a lot of volume at a capitulation. Okay, they're just like the reverse of each other, right? You have a lot of people coming in and buying the top, and then you have a lot of people coming in selling the bottom or buying the bottom, right? Or buying the bottom. So depends on which way you think about it. I mean, of course, for every person that's buying, there's someone selling, and vice versa. But when you think about this, you also have to look at, okay, well, what happened next? What happened in 2019? We had a rally. It ended with a lot of volume, okay? And how did this downtrend end? How did it end? Well, we saw, declining volume, and we hit a brick wall. And what was that brick wall? Well, it was capitulation. It was capitulation. So you have exhibit B. So you have exhibit A and exhibit B. Now, there's also an exhibit C. And exhibit C is actually what a lot of you already experienced back in May of 2021, right? Is it not? We had a capitulation here. Well, why was this one more significant than what we saw already? Well, this one in May of 2021, my friends, was accompanied by a lot of volume. So you saw declining volume into a brick wall, and it ultimately sustained a new bull trend for a while. And it actually led us to a new all-time high. But since then, we have been seeing declining volume or decreasing volume, or a volume that's just been sort of waning somewhat. Hasn't really been doing a whole lot. And the idea is, what if Bitcoin has to capitulate before we see a sustained move higher? That's exactly what happened in December of 2018, right here. It's exactly what happened in March of 2020, right here. And it's exactly what happened in May of 2021, right here. Unfortunately, we have not seen a capitulation anytime recently that would cause a lot of long-term market participants to say, okay, this thing's going to go higher in the short term. Now, I always like to play devil's advocate against myself. Obviously, I try to figure out what questions are you guys going to have. Someone might say, if you look at this volume from a very unbiased perspective, you could say that this was the blow off top, which actually corresponded to 42K, and then we actually had a distribution phase following that. I know that sounds weird, but if you look at the HODL waves and whatnot, you can see it started really going down at around 42K. A lot of people were taking profits there, and then even more so as we went into the distribution phase. Now we hit this brick wall, but you could argue that maybe this is the capitulation we needed to ultimately fuel a new rally. I don't necessarily buy that. I actually still think that Bitcoin needs to have some type of capitulation. But I also, again, I'm not going to act overly deterministic about things. I will remind people that it's when the market is bearish, it's where the long-term money is made. If you have the conviction to buy when the market is bearish and just stick with it, no matter how bad it gets, then ultimately you will be rewarded eventually if history is any indication. But the problem I see right now is that Bitcoin's volume is still very lackluster, and we haven't really seen that capitulation event. Now, it sort of begs the question, well, what type of capitulation event would we need to see? What price would it need to go to for it to be considered a capitulation? listen, I've seen this market a lot of time, or I've seen this market a long time. There's always going to be people calling for lower prices no matter where we go. So, for instance, right now there's people calling for lower prices. If we go to 30K, there's going to be people calling for lower prices. If we go to 20K, they'll call for lower prices. 10K, they'll keep calling. Whatever we go to, there's always going to be someone that's going to call for a lower price for Bitcoin. So we can talk about realistic things, right? Realistic things, what that means, what would those levels mean? One of those realistic scenarios would just be to look at some of the long-term moving averages we've held as support in the past. You have the 200 week. This is sort of where I would consider. You also have the 300 week, and then you have the 100 week. Okay, so you simply look at these three areas as sort of value areas. Okay, now the 100 week SMA is currently at around 36K. All right. So if you isolate the 100 week moving average, what you'll notice is that anytime we go below the 100 week, that period is like the best time to buy Bitcoin going into the new bull market. Okay. So going below the 100 week is the best time to buy before the new bull market starts, if that happens. So if we drop below here, you need to recognize that it would mean Bitcoin is likely putting in a lower low, and it's going to make a lot of people very fearful. Altcoin, Bitcoin valuations are likely going to get extremely wrecked, and it's just the way it is, right? I mean, it's unfortunately just the way it is. But if we go below the 100-week SMA, then whatever that capitulation brings, what you want to look for is a lot of volume. You can see a lot of volume here in 2014 as well, right? You see a lot of volume there. You can see it in 2018. You can see it in March 2020, and you can see it in May of 2021. We don't see it yet, right? Like, it's not there. And so the argument is we still need to capitulate, right? We still need to capitulate, and we just simply have not seen it yet. We need to see a lot of volume come into the space and to really wipe out whoever is remaining there is to actually be wiped out. Okay. So the 100-week moving average, I think, is sort of the first line in the sand. Below that, obviously you have the date with destiny. We've talked about the date with destiny before. That is the 200-week moving average. That is currently at 21.6K. Okay, so if Bitcoin were to go to 21.6K, that would be you're talking about another 40% drop, right? Another 40% drop. I know it sounds like a lot, but listen, I mean, we talked about a date with destiny too back in I think in January or February, and we also talked about the Bitcoin, the bear thesis explained not too long ago. But you have to remember that just saying things like it can't happen and whatnot, well, it has happened before to us, okay? I mean, I was a buyer of Bitcoin at 6K, and I watched it go to 3K. I was a buyer at Bitcoin at 7K and 10K and whatnot, and I still watched it go back down to $3,800. So don't let people tell you it can't happen. It can happen, right? It can. We've seen it happen before. And again, with regards, I see the questions about lengthening cycles and whatnot. Listen, I mean, if Bitcoin goes below, and I've said this before, if it goes below the fair value trend line here, I think, yeah, you have to call it a new cycle, right? You have to. There's just no way of getting around it. So remember, I do not trade cycle theory. I trade the risk levels. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I sold up here. I accumulated over here, got wrecked over here. Okay, I'm being completely honest, right? I try to navigate the cycles as best as I can, and if I were trading cycle theory, I wouldn't have taken profits over here. But I only sell my Bitcoin whenever we go to the higher risk bands, and that's what we went to. We went to the higher risk bands in early 2021. So now we're sitting here looking at this, and we're flirting with the 100-week moving average. We have failed to capitulate yet with a lot of volume. So that tells me, at the very least, we need to go retest the summer lows more than likely, at the very least, in order to potentially get that capitulation volume that we're looking for. Okay? So try to keep this in mind. Obviously, there's also the 300-week as well, which we have had wicks to. It's kind of scary, but I mean, it's currently at around 16K, right? So that's at 16K. Do I think Bitcoin's going to go to 16K? I think the chances of that are relatively low, to be completely honest. I think it's relatively low because that's where it is today. Like, if you had to imagine, to give you an idea, by the time Bitcoin was at the 100-week in 2018, the 300-week was at 2100. But by the time we hit the 300-week, the 300-week had gone up like 72%. So like if we have to hit the 300-week, let's suppose it goes up 50%, then that would mean at $24,000. So, again, if I had to guess where, a potential worst case scenario, as I've said before, we've made videos on this before, the potential worst case scenario for Bitcoin, in my opinion, is 20K plus or minus a few K. Like, it could be 25K, it could be slightly below 20, but I don't think it would get much worse than that. If it does, then it's probably being accompanied by some ongoing risk-off environment where the Fed refuses to pivot and the market, or we're just in a longer-term recession. But I don't think that's the most likely scenario. I look at the market today and I say, we're in a bear market, and I know it's not a popular theory. I know I get a lot of flack for saying it, and I see the comments on other places saying that, calling me out for calling it a bear market, but I have to call it as I see it. And what I see right now is I see weakness. I see Bitcoin being rejected by the bull market support band, and anytime we get above it, we just come right back below it. I see failure to get above the 200-day SMA, just like we failed to get above it in 2018. It's just the same story, my friends, right? It's the same story. The same story is being told, okay? And I've talked about this more than once. The same story is being told. And we got rejected off the 200-day here after putting in higher low and higher low and higher low. And then we put in a lower low. Higher low, rejection off the 200-day, potentially putting in a lower low. And as I said before, if this happens, this is where the Bitcoin dominance goes up, right? If that happens, this happened in June of 2018, the Bitcoin dominance, June of 2018, it was the same level that it is today, right? You go back to June of 2018, it was at 42%, June 2018. And then what happened after it? It shot all the way up to 62% within just a few months, okay? So I'm telling you now, I've said it in the last several videos, altcoins remain highly risky, right? Highly risky. The problem that I see is that whether Bitcoin goes up or down, the Bitcoin dominance is likely to go up, right? So if Bitcoin going up or down means altcoins are going to go down against Bitcoin, then that means Bitcoin dominance is likely going to go up. So unfortunately, that is the path of least resistance that I currently see, is for the Bitcoin dominance to go up. And until that time, obviously altcoins remain still, right? They still remain very risky. So try to be responsible out there with your investments. I'm obviously not a financial advisor, but I do want people to be responsible and to look at the market and say, we are in danger of putting in a lower low. And if that happens, that's where the Bitcoin dominance really gets moving and all Bitcoin valuations go down. So just make sure you guys watch out for a potential Bitcoin capitulation. The exact bottom is hard to know, but what I would say to look for is to look for volume. Okay, so if you're going to ask me what exactly is the bottom, I don't know exactly where the bottom would be, but if you see a lot of volume come in, similar to what we saw back in, say, May of 2021 or March of 2020 or December of 2018, if you see something like that where you get a lot of volume coming in at a capitulation wick, that's usually where you look for a change in the trend, okay? So keep an eye out for that. And remember, as I showed in the bear thesis explained, we are in fact still below the 50-week moving average. And usually after getting below the 50-week moving average, it means that we have to go down for a while, okay? I mean, this was like a 60-something% drop. In 2018, it wasn't quite as bad, like a 55% drop. If we were to extrapolate that and just say, all right, maybe this one won't be quite as bad since the upside was also limited, and say it's like a 40% drop, that would put you from the 50-week, from where we dropped below, that would put Bitcoin at around 29K as a potential bottom. If we go down 50%, it would put Bitcoin at 24K as a potential bottom. So don't let anyone tell you that, Bitcoin can't go to 30K. Don't let them say it can't go to 25K. It can. It doesn't have to, but it can go there based on just what we've historically seen. And it would be actually pretty normal for it to do something like that, right? For it to have some type of a capitulation like we saw over here, and then that lead to a new uptrend. To have a capitulation and it lead to a new uptrend. That's what we're looking for. So remember, I've talked about the strategies. If you guys want more insight, remember to check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. We'll see if we get capitulation. If we do, that's typically where things turn around. And if we get a date with Destiny at the 200 week, that usually leads to another impressive rally by Bitcoin. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.